Goeiedag, good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world. Well, I wanted to put this video out to celebrate something really exciting for those who took my advice years ago and invested in silver and gold. And I'm not talking about paper silver and gold, I'm talking about actually owning the metal at home, having the gold and the silver in a safe somewhere safely at home. Well, it's very interesting because over the last 2 years I made 3 predictions to one of the great skeptics about precious metals, who is Davy Rood, who talks about real money but then completely ignores physical silver and gold, which is real money, whereas fiat money, which is in the world that he lives in, is someone else's debt. It's not real money. It's a charade. It's a ponzi scheme. And that's why what's happening right now with silver and gold is that they are exploding in price. I've put out a couple of videos this year about silver and gold, but let me just give you an update. Silver now is over 62 US dollars per ounce, or well over 1,000 rand per ounce for one of these little beauties. Okay, one of these little beauties. This is the Springbok. You know, the old Springbok 1 ounce silver. I've got hundreds of them, and they're worth over 1,000 rand each right now. When I started talking about them way back in the COVID times and saying, hey guys, it's a good time to start thinking about, and of course everything I say is not financial advice. I'm just giving someone who's been following, studying and watching precious metals all his life, and that's over 60 years. I don't want to go back to the bunker hunt 1980 story where I bought a farm in the Drakensberg, a 50-acre farm with silver I'd actually bought from people who deposited their coins at the bank branch. Now, I'm not going to go there. I'm going to stick to what I want to tell you now. Right now, 1 ounce of silver is going to cost you over 1,000 rand. And I'm going to show you now the old silver 5 shilling coin. I've got over 1,000 of these guys. And pre-1950, they were 80% silver. Post-1950, they were 50% silver. They each weigh in perfect condition 28.28 grams, which is about 90% of an ounce, a troy ounce. We aren't talking the grocery ounce, I'm talking about the precious metal ounce, which is 31.12 or somewhere around that grams per ounce. But the old silver crowns, 28.28 grams, you do the math, 80%, it's about 23 grams of silver per coin, which is about, say about 60 to 70% of an ounce per coin. And the 50%, much easier to work out, 28.28, 14.14, it's about 45% of an ounce. So just over 2 of those post-1950 coins will to get you close to an ounce of silver. And if you go on eBay now, you can check this out for yourself. You go on eBay right now and you try and find one of the old silver South African crowns for under 50 US dollars per ounce, you're doing very well, because there's an incredible shortage of silver. Not because of speculators, not because of stackers like me, but because of the industrial demand of silver. In the last 5 years, there's been a 200 million ounce plus shortage of silver production over demand. So in other words, the last 5 years, over 1 billion ounces of silver has been used above the amount that's actually being produced. So there's this incredible squeeze coming on, and that's why I have been saying for years, guys, look at precious metals, because silver and gold are like two little bed bugs, two little peas in a pod, okay? They stick together. And there's what's called the gold-silver ratio, and in the last 8 weeks, the gold-silver ratio has collapsed from about 90 ounces of silver to 1 ounce of gold, down to below 70 ounces of silver to 1 ounce of gold. Such is the demand for silver right now. Now, I've got shitloads of the stuff. I mean, seriously, I've got shitloads of the stuff. But because I've stuck to my laurels, and because I've always believed in precious metals, because it's real money, Darby. It's not this bullshit fiat money that we use on our credit cards and stuff like that. Physical silver, the asset is in the coin. That 1 ounce silver, the actual value is in the metal that I'm holding in my hand. It's not someone else's debt. And that's something that people really have to get their head around. Now, okay, so we're talking about an explosion in the precious metal market. And I'll tell you how big this explosion is. Silver prices this year have more than doubled. So back in the 1st of January 2025, it was about 28 US dollars per ounce, okay? And it was about a month or two before that, I said to Darby, Darby, silver's going to hit 100 Australian dollars per ounce before the end of 2026. And Darby just kind of laughed and said, good luck with that, because he doesn't believe in real money. Well, I'm going to show you an email I sent to Darby Root with a couple of images, and you can go and check out the links for yourself, where I said, Darby, do you remember what we discussed last year? And you can see his response. Let's watch that. So, because I'm very big in precious metals, my investment in silver and gold has more than doubled in the last 12 months. And as I mentioned earlier, I've got over 1,000 of those beautiful Springbok silver crowns, over 1,000 of them. And even at 50%, they're close to half an ounce of pure silver. Let's look at that once more time. So, this is where I'm at right now. Back in 1980, I bought a farm by selling my silver at the right time, 2 weeks before the silver price crashed, when Bunker Hunt lost control of the short position he had on, the control he had on silver back then. And right now, I'm going through the second incredible explosion in the value of my investment. So these things don't come around very often. But what makes it different today is very simple. Very, very simple. Is that the industrial demand now, because of artificial intelligence, which needs huge amounts of silver, solar panels, which use it's something like 200 million ounces of silver per year at the moment, which is about 25% of silver production. Then we got things like your mobile phone has silver in it. There are so many different areas. There's health applications. There's missiles. You know those missiles that Russia is sending into Ukraine and vice versa, and all this sort of stuff that's going all over the place, and all this talking about war and building missiles and, preparing for war. The average cruise missile has something like 5 kilos of silver in it. So the industrial application, from military, from digital to health to just about everything you can think of, silver is a critical mineral, which is why Donald Trump just a month ago declared that silver in America is now a strategic critical mineral. They've got to make sure they've got a supply of it, because things like rare earths, which China has a control of in some areas, are becoming an issue. Because without those rare earth materials in military and other applications, America is basically effed. So, getting back to silver. Okay, let's get back to silver. This year, at the start, silver was about $28 per ounce. And as I've just shown you, I said to Darby, and he just sort of laughed and said, yeah, good luck with that. I said to Darby that the price of silver would rise to over 100 Australian dollars per ounce. That's over 1,000 rand per ounce. You can go and check it out for yourself. The links are there. It did it. And Darby acknowledged that. And before that, in January 2024, I'd said to Darby, this is before gold really took off. I said to Darby in early 2024, I said, Darby, watch gold. This year, gold is going to explode. It did. And it continued exploding right through to 2025. And must be in about September, August, yeah, it would have been a few months after that I said to Darby, now watch silver. And silver kind of faltered a bit, but then it just suddenly went absolutely explosive. So you're probably all saying, well, Scotty, where's gold and silver going to go in the future? Well, let me tell you. If you look what's happening in the United Kingdom, if you look what's happening in Europe, if you look what's happening in just about every Western country of the world, including the United States of America, what you see is chaos. chaos is not good for a stable economy. The European Union is going to collapse. There's no question about that in my mind. Ukraine will have to give significant amount of land to Russia. You've got European leaders like Starmer, who's an absolute dickhead, like Macron, who's also a dickhead. You've got Ursula von der Leyen, who's the EU president, unelected EU president, who is a complete blonde, dumb shell. These are the people who are running the European Union. It's stuffed. It's gone. It's finished. The Europe is not the Europe that you knew if you're my age when, they had credibility, they had integrity. It's a load of codswallop. So what you've now got is this fiat money, which is debt-based, which has nothing back in it at all. It's just a load of crap, which is going to collapse. Now, the BRICS countries, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, joined by countries like Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, some really, really big countries who said, hey, we want to be part of you. We want to get away from this crap that's going on in the West, i.e. read Europe and America, and unfortunately here in Australia. So what the BRICS countries have done, and you can Google this, is they've bought a huge amount of gold and silver to underwrite their new currency that they're calling the unit. Yes, you heard it right. UNIT, the unit. You can go and Google this. The BRICS countries are bringing out a new digital currency called the unit, which will be 40% backed by gold. Now remember, in 1971, Richard Nixon, that idiot, the president back then in the United States of America, he took the US off the gold standard and said, oh, well, we'll just get tied up with the petrodollar, which is why they did some deals with Saudi Arabia and the kingdom over there. And that's all kind of coming unstuck, but they're not talking about it. That's why Saudi Arabia is now aligning itself with BRICS. And in fact, Saudi Arabia has just bought a huge amount of physical silver through an ETF. Not the best way to buy physical silver, mind you, but because it's such a huge amount, it will be honored. Now, the situation is that there is a move back to precious metals to underwrite money. Real money. Davy Root, I hope you're listening to me. So, what's happening is the old fiat money, this crap that, I know I pull this up quite often, but, this stuff, I'm a trillionaire. It's bullshit. It's all. In fact, I've got a bunch of these. Look at this. I've got a 10. There's a $20 trillion. This is what fiat money is. It's just bullshit. And when they talk about inflation is actually the process used by the very well connected, the very wealthy people, to actually steal from the poor, steal from you. Because they lift the prices, they get the profit, you suck the hind tit, if I can be so blunt as to say that. So that's why they don't want gold and silver coming back in, because it's their road, golden road, to make money. And the BRICS countries have said to you, we're going to actually make sure that our money is really based on something tangible. So there is this great multipolar divide happening right now financially. The BRICS countries, the growing number of those, as I mentioned, and then you've got the old Bank of International Settlements, the BIS, based in Basel in Switzerland, which is the old Rothschild, Rockefeller control using bullshit fiat money, all debt-based, etc., etc. We saw what happened when that goes awry back in 2007, 2008. Do you remember that? Well, if you don't, just look it up. So, what's my prediction on gold and silver? Well, Darby, I'm not going to send you an email this time. I'm going to make this a public prediction. And that is that next year, 2026, silver is going to come under incredible duress. I'm talking about the price, because the demand for silver, not by speculators, not by the retail industry, not by little stackers like myself, but by industry. Those companies that need silver to actually get their manufacturing systems to work properly, they need that silver in tiny, tiny quantities. So it's not going to impact their price significantly if the silver price goes up by triple or whatever. They just need the actual metal. It's a demand for the metal. What's going to happen next year is that the price of silver is going to exceed, this is my prediction, it's going to exceed $100 per ounce. And I would say that that will probably happen before June 2026. And who knows where it will go after that. Now, if we look at Bitcoin, okay, now this bit of code that just sits somewhere hovering around on the internet that's got nothing back in it, it doesn't have anything like the asset value in the actual coin. Bitcoin is the biggest scam ever. If it can jump like it did a couple of years ago from about 18,000 US dollars per Bitcoin to over 120,000 US dollars because of, you know, all this sort of propaganda about how it's going to do ballistic things. I remember there was one prediction that Bitcoin this year would hit $1 million. $1 million for a Bitcoin. Well, guess what happened, arsehole? Whoever you were who made that prediction, guess what happened? Bitcoin is down since the beginning of the year, where it was close to $100,000. It's now down. It's below that figure. So it's actually lost money during 2025. Whereas precious metals, which are real money, you can hold the value in your hand. When you've got the coin, you hold it in your hand. This stuff, real money in your hand, there it is, okay? There it is. That stuff is real money, not a piece of code on the computer screen. What happens if the electricity goes down? What happens if you get hacked, which is happening more and more often now to people who've got crypto? What happens if the internet goes down? How do you access your crypto? Well, the simple answer, Dumbo, is you don't. It's gone. You can't. It's a bit of code. That's all it is. It's bullshit. So simple. It's simples. It really is simples. It's so crazy.
Simples.
When you've got that in your hand and you go into a shop and you say, look, I've got an ounce of silver here. I want to buy stuff. This is after fiat money's collapsed. You're able to buy just about anything in that shop. The price of, or the value of that coin, that 1 ounce coin, is going to be explosive. All right, they talk about $62 now, when it was $28 this time last year. Just think about this. We're talking about the buying power. People will be so desperate to have real money I'm talking about gold and I'm talking about silver. Physical gold and physical silver, not a line of code on a computer screen, or not fiat money, which, as Zimbabwe found out, is a load of crap. So there's only a certain amount of gold and silver, and those who bought in when I suggested they should, congratulations, guys. Because if you think that, this is my view, if you think that you've done well so far, you wait until next year. I'm predicting that here in Australia, where the housing crisis is getting absolutely crazy, about 10% of people who own houses are now getting close to being foreclosed by banks with huge loans. I mean, we're talking about property prices in Australia, because what happened was the interest rates came right down to just about zero, and then of course everybody got on the bandwagon, got these fixed loans for 2 years, paying just about nothing, paying over $1 million on low salaries. And what happens? Well, today you're paying about 5% interest, and of course 5% on, let's say, $800,000 is a shitload of cash, and they can't pay. And here in Australia, the housing crisis is critical. Nobody's talking about it. You're certainly, if you go on YouTube, you'll find out lots of people who they're talking about it, but in the mainstream media, nothing, nada. It's all about censorship. So why am I talking about housing prices? Because the banks are going to be desperate to sell these foreclosed assets where they've basically screwed over people who bought overpriced properties when the interest rates were low. So I'm just sitting there like a widow spider on the spider web. In the corner, I've got a shitload of silver, I've got a shitload of gold. And when the housing market collapses, that's when I'm going to, because I'm renting. I don't own a house. I'm renting. I'm going to pick up a house for pennies in the dollar, because there'll be so much supply of houses which are being sold and there are going to be no buyers. So I'll go to an auction and I'll say, okay, let's say a house is worth $1 million at the moment in Brisbane, Australia. I'll go to the auction, and it might take me a few auctions to actually close this, but I'll say, okay, I'll bid $1,000 and I'll pay it in silver. And the ears will go up. Silver? Oh, you got silver. You got silver. Oh, you got real money. Oh, look what's happened to Fiat. That's when you hit the jackpot. And my intention over the next year or two is to go to a lot of auctions and take a few of my little silver beauties with me and say, okay, I can offer you this or that, the other. I might even, if it's a nice place, bring a 1 ounce gold bar with me and sort of say, well, I'll offer this for that property. This is real money. It's not this bullshit that you're talking about. And of course, that bullshit will have collapsed. But you know what? Just like the Weimar Germany back in the 1920s, you could buy, I'm not joking, you could buy a house for the price of a gold sovereign. That's the old £1 gold coin, because their currency, just like the Zim dollar, had collapsed. People were desperate for gold or silver, real money, so they could go and buy food for their family. And that's why I'm very happy when people don't buy gold and silver, because it allows me to buy it cheaply, even at today's price. Well, last I looked, it was close to $63 per ounce. And Darby, I would love you to start talking about, I'm talking to Darby Root now, I'd love you to start talking about the incredible explosion in value of precious metals during 2025. Because it seems to be a subject that you kind of ignore, while you do talk so much about crypto, which has really performed very badly this year. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. I just wanted to make this video, just say that Merry Christmas to everybody in South Africa, all my family, all my friends. Just understand that if you think that you missed the boat when it comes to silver and gold, well, you certainly missed the absolute steal. But if you invest in silver and gold, in my view, and I'm not a financial advisor, but in my view, next year you will be jumping up and down and saying, whoopee-doo, because the party has only just begun. Please remember to register on Loving Life to be kept informed. Please like this video, please share this video, and above all, do not put your money into worthless fiat. Take care.